Hi, I'm back with you guys for the last chapter of our story. It's chapter 30 and it's called A World at Stake. The words from the loose page spun through the air and created the world of the wonderful Wizard of Oz around Alex and Lester. She saw the words Emerald City fly into the distance, and before the city was even fully formed, Alex hopped onto Lester's back and they flew into the west, all the while praying their friends would still be at the Wicked Witch's castle. The words continued to construct the Winky country below them as they headed to the Wicked Witch of the West's castle. Alex and Lester circled the castle as it was generated from the ground up. They landed on the balcony just outside the throne room, and Alex blasted the glass doors open with a bright flash. "Goldilocks, Jack, Blue Bow," Alex called, but all she heard was the echo of her own voice. The throne room was completely deserted. Alex's anxiety rose and she feared the worst. What if her uncle had traveled back through the stories and separated her friends too? They may never find them, and without a book to travel home through, Alex might be stuck in Oz for a very long time. A soft breeze blew from the empty room behind her. She turned around and saw a bright golden piece of paper appear out of thin air. The paper landed on the ground and a bright beam of light shined out of it. 7 silhouettes of all shapes and sizes stepped out of the beam. The silhouettes vibrated like static on a broken television. Like the words of a recently entered story, the figures slowly gained color and texture until Alex recognized one. "Connor!" Alex screamed. "Alex!" Connor yelled. The twins were overjoyed to see each other. Alex ran across the throne room and leaped into his arms. They shared a massive hug until Connor couldn't hold her up any longer. "I was afraid I'd never see you again," Alex said. She recognized the other silhouettes as they became solid. "Mr. Woodman, Peter, I'm so glad you're all right. Wait, who are they?" Connor was just as surprised to see the merry men that had traveled into the castle behind him. "Guys, what are you doing here?" he said. "We couldn't let our sorcerer travel into the strange world without our protection," Robin Hood said. "The merry men will stand by your side till the end." "Whatever," Connor sighed. He didn't have the patience to argue. "Alex, allow me to introduce you to Robin Hood and the Merry Men of Sherwood Forest." Alex couldn't believe the historic outlaws were standing in front of her. She was a little starstruck. "The Robin Hood?" she asked. "It's so nice to meet you. I've read all about you." "The pleasure is all mine, my lady," Robin Hood said and kissed her hand. "Any sister of the sorcerer is a sister of mine." "He's so loud," Alex whispered to her brother. "Why does he call you a sorcerer?" "It's a long story, but I convinced them I'm a sorcerer," Connor said. "They aren't the only ones he convinced," the Tin Woodman said with a grin. "You should be very proud of your brother, Alex. He activated the portal potion all by himself." "You did?" Alex said with an excited smile. "Connor, that's incredible. I've always told you that there was magic somewhere inside of you." Connor shrugged bashfully. It wasn't that big of a deal. The hardest part was figuring out how to channel it. Peter animatedly flew into the air. "You should have seen it, Alex. First, Connor pointed at the potion and boom! A spark blasted out of his finger. Then the potion was like whoosh. "Here, you ready when you are, Captain." Then we poured it all over the page and it was like bam! Let there be light. Alex was so proud of her brother she almost burst with pride. "As soon as I found the page, I knew you'd find yours and create the potion too." "Great minds think alike," Connor said. "Well, I spent 2 weeks in Nottingham. Where did our jerk of an uncle send you guys?" "He sent us into King Arthur," Alex said. "Connor, I met Merlin and Arthur. They helped me create the portal potion." "No way," Connor said. But after his trip, he didn't know why he was so surprised. "Where is Mother Goose?" There was no way Alex could gently break the news to him, so she just came right out and said it. She decided to stay with Merlin. They sort of had a thing. Connor looked back and forth between Alex and Lester in disbelief. Lester nodded, confirming it for him. "Well, I didn't see that one coming," Connor said. "So is she gone for good?" "I can fill you in on all the details later," Alex said. "Right now we've got to find Jack and Goldilocks. I don't think they're in the castle anymore." "Alex, we've been gone for 2 weeks," he said. "I bet they traveled back into the fairy tale world. Let's find the book." They searched the throne room, and Connor found the copy of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz placed neatly on the throne. "They must have left this here in case we came back," Connor said. "Our uncle would have destroyed it like the books he sent us into." "There's only one way to find out," Alex said. The twins opened the book together, and a strong beam of light emitted from it. The others gathered around it. "Be careful, guys," Connor told them. "There's no way of telling what might be waiting on the other side of this." One by one, the twins, the merry men, Lester, the Tin Woodman, and Peter stepped into the beam of light. They traveled back into the fairy tale world. Oz was stripped away word by word, description by description. The witch's castle peeled away and the cave was uncovered. The same cave their journey started from. They heard several voices before they saw anyone. As the cave was revealed, the twins could see it was much more occupied than when they left. Jack and Goldilocks were sitting together on one side of the cave with Bluebow perched on Jack's shoulder. The lost boys played with rocks in the back of the cave, while Red cradled an infant. She looked terrible and stared off into space. It was late and the twins noticed campfires just outside the entrance to the cave. They saw soldiers from the Northern Kingdom and the Charming Kingdom sitting around them. Sir Grant and Sir Lambton were among them. Each face was longer than the next, and they were all badly banged up. Haggett attended to the soldiers, setting their injuries ablaze with flames of her healing fire. The cave was filled with so much despair it could have been cut with a knife. Everyone looked as if they had been through their own versions of hell. Finally, the twins and the others became visible to the people in the cave, officially returning from Oz. Everyone was ecstatic to see them, as if they had come back from the dead. Their friends and the soldiers got to their feet and ran to greet them. "Alex, Connor, thank goodness you're alive," Goldilocks said and embraced the twins. Her eyes were filled with tears, but Goldilocks wasn't hormonal. She was genuinely relieved. Upon first glance at the soldiers, the merry men's knee-jerk reaction was to reach for their weapons. "Don't worry, guys," Connor said. "They're all friends in this cave." "Peter!" the lost boys called and jumped up and down when they saw him. Peter flew across the cave and let them form some ceremonious dog pile on top of him. "Wait a second, where's Slightly?" Peter asked. The lost boys pointed to the infant in Red's arms and filled him in on what had happened. Red was the only one who didn't greet the twins. She stayed seated and continued staring off. It was like she was in a trance. "What happened to Red?" Connor asked. "She tried rescuing Froggy from Oriana and discovered the witch had imprisoned him in a magic mirror," Goldilocks said. The twins gasped and covered their mouths. "Unfortunately, that's the least of our worries," Jack said. "Your uncle and the army have arrived." "That's what we were afraid of," Connor said. "Jack, tell us everything you know," Alex said. Jack told the twins how he and Goldilocks returned to the fairy tale world after a week of waiting for them in the castle. Around the same time, their uncle entered the world and began attacking the kingdoms. From what they knew, the army split up and each kingdom was attacked at the same time. "We never saw it coming," Sir Grant recalled. "An enormous ship flew down from the clouds in the middle of the night and opened fire on the place. There was barely anything left after the cannons were stopped. Pirates kidnapped King Chandler and Queen Snow White. The Charming Kingdom was stormed by an army of men and women in yellow armor," Sir Lambton said. "Winkies," the Tin Woodman said fearfully. "Heaven knows what they did with the royal family," Lambton said. "My men and I barely made it out of the kingdom alive. We found Sir Grant and his men in the Dwarf Forest, and Jack found us here. We've been hiding in this cave ever since." The twins were taking deep breaths so they wouldn't become sick. "What about the other kingdoms?" Connor asked. "We assume the same happened to them, but we haven't made any contact," Jack said. "And the fairies?" Alex asked. "No one has heard from them either, but it's possible they were hit first," Goldilocks said. "The first thing your uncle did when he arrived was free the prisoners from Pinocchio prison. All the soldiers from the Grand Army and the criminals that aided them are once again under his command." Alex and Connor exchanged horrified looks. Their biggest nightmare had become a reality. "We need to get to the fairy kingdom and find a way to the council," Alex said. "Connor and I will leave straight away. Everyone needs to stay in the cave until they hear from us." "You can't leave," Lambton said. "The masked man's army is everywhere, even the skies. There's no way it'll go undetected, even if you fly that bird." The twins glanced at Lester and he gulped. "We won't be traveling by land or sky," Alex said. "I'll transport us there magically." "Are you sure about that?" Connor asked. "Last time I suggested that you were hesitant." "We don't have a choice," Alex said. "Come on, let's waste no more time." The twins embraced and Alex counted to 3. They disappeared from the cave with a bright flash. Alex transported herself and her brother somewhere outside, but they weren't exactly sure where. The air was filled with smoke, and the ground was littered with debris. "Connor, look!" Alex gasped and pointed to the distance. "It's the fairy palace." The fairy palace was almost unrecognizable. Its trademark glow had faded away, and most of it had been blown to smithereens. The gardens had been destroyed too and were covered in an ashy coat of dust. The statues that had been erected in their grandmother's memory lay in pieces on the ground. Alex and Connor both became teary-eyed at the sight. There was no sign of life anywhere. They hoped the fairies had fled in time to save themselves, but if the council had been inside the palace during the attack, it wasn't likely. The Hall of Dreams, grandmother's chambers, all of it's gone, Alex cried. Let's see if we can find anything or anyone inside, Connor said. They walked across the dusty earth and quietly climbed into the palace ruins. Everything was so damaged they couldn't tell what anything was anymore. The only room they could identify was the Great Hall, and that was just because of its size. As soon as Alex and Connor entered the hall, 7 figures came into view. The twins quickly dived behind a fallen pillar. The air was still hazy from the attack, and they couldn't see who or what the figures were. Alex, I don't think they're moving, Connor said. You're right, they're not people, they're statues, she said. That's odd, there weren't any statues in the Grand Hall before. The twins walked deeper into the hall to have a closer look. The statues looked frightened and were awkwardly positioned as if they were trying to run from something. The longer the twins stared at the scared faces of the statues, the more familiar they became. Oh my goodness, Connor said. Alex, these aren't statues, it's the council. They've been turned to stone. Emeralda, Xanthos, Skylene, Tangerina, Rosette, Violetta, and Coral were hard to identify now that they were all the same color as stone. But Connor was right. It was too much for Alex to bear. She ran to the side of the room and became sick. What could have done this? She asked. I don't know, Connor said and rubbed his back. Alex? Connor? A little voice said somewhere in the palace. The twins saw something small hovering near a windowsill on the other side of the hall and were relieved to see it was only Trix. She was covered in dust and her wings were mangled, making it difficult to fly. Trix, I'm so happy to see you, Alex said. What happened here? Connor asked. The palace was attacked by a flying ship, she said. What turned the council into stone? Alex asked. A horrible monster, Trix said, and trembled at the thought of it. What kind of monster? Connor asked. I didn't see it, Trix said. I was so scared I closed my eyes and hid, but Noodle and Merkle weren't so lucky. Trix gestured to the windowsill, and the twins saw that her friends had been turned to stone too. Like the council, they also looked terrified and were positioned like it happened while they were trying to escape. Trix, what happened to the monster? Connor asked. It left with the pirate ship, Trix sniffled. And what happened to all the other fairies? Alex asked. Some hid in the forest, but I'm not sure what happened to the others, she said. Trix, I want you to hide in the forest too, Alex instructed. Get away from here. Find some place to stay until it's safe again. We're going to figure something out. Trix nodded and flew off as fast as her wings could carry her. Connor, I think our uncle has recruited creatures beyond the realms of literature, Alex said as she glanced around the statues. It looks like something from mythology. I don't know how we're going to stop him. Alex took a seat on the windowsill while Connor paced in front of her. They spent an hour in total silence as they tried to think of ways to save the fairy tale world. Connor suddenly stopped in his tracks and looked up toward one of the only remaining towers of the palace. The south tower survived the attack, he said to himself. His eyes suddenly lit up, and Alex knew the idea that was forming in his head. What are you thinking? She asked. I know how we can stop him, he said excitedly. How? By forming an army of our own, Connor said. Come on, follow me. Before she could question him further, Connor raced through the wrecked palace and found the stairs leading to the south tower. He sprinted up the steps and Alex chased after him. They entered a circular room at the top of the tower. It was covered in dust and cobwebs, but an empty archway stood in the middle of the room. Connor searched the wall with his hands, feeling around for something. How are we supposed to form an army? Alex asked. Exactly how our uncle did it, he said. We'll travel into stories and recruit characters that can help us, and I know exactly which ones we'll ask. Do you still have that portal potion on you? Alex retrieved the flask she had tucked into her waistband. Yes, but... Great, Connor said. We have to make a stop in the other world first. I need to find the... Oh, I found it. He pulled the lever on the side of the wall, and the blue curtain magically appeared in the archway. Alex could see the world of light beyond it, a world she knew every time she traveled between the fairy tale world and the other world. Yes, Connor said. The portal still works. Let's go. I'm confused. Why do we have to travel into the other world? Alex said. Because that's where the stories are, he said. Which stories are you talking about? Connor paused just as he was about to step through the curtain. Mine, he said. So that ends our third book of Land of Stories, Beyond the Kingdoms. And we'll be reading the next book, which is An Author's Odyssey. I'll continue with that book next time. I'll see you guys later. Bye.